Melissa Roberts sat in her small apartment, staring at the wedding invitation in her hands. At 30 years old, she had grown used to feeling like the family disappointment. Her younger sister Ashley was getting married next month, and their parents couldn't stop talking about how perfect everything was going to be. The invitation was fancy, with gold letters and expensive paper. Ashley had always been the golden child, the one who got straight A's, married her college sweetheart, and now worked as a lawyer in the city. Melissa, on the other hand, had taken a different path that her family never understood or supported. Growing up in the quiet neighborhood of Ferndale Heights, Melissa had always felt different from her family. While Ashley focused on her studies and social life, Melissa spent her time reading military history books and dreaming of serving her country. Her parents, Robert and Patricia Roberts, owned a successful insurance company and expected both their daughters to follow traditional paths. They wanted Melissa to go to college, find a nice husband, and settle down like Ashley was doing. But Melissa had other plans. The day she turned 18, she walked into the military recruitment office and signed up for the Army. Her parents were furious. They called it a phase, a rebellion, a waste of her potential. They said she was throwing her life away and embarrassing the family name. "You're making a huge mistake," her father had shouted that day. "The military is no place for a young woman. You should be thinking about college and your future." Her mother had cried and begged her to reconsider. "What will people think? What will we tell our friends? This isn't what we raised you for." But Melissa was determined. She left for basic training with her parents. Disappointed faces burned into her memory. Over the years, she sent letters and tried to call, but the conversations were always short and cold. Her parents barely acknowledged her military service, treating it like a hobby she would eventually outgrow. During family gatherings, they would change the subject whenever someone asked about Melissa's work. When she came home for holidays, they would introduce her simply as our daughter, without mentioning her rank or achievements. It hurt more than she ever let on. The worst part was how they treated her compared to Ashley. Every phone call home was filled with updates about Ashley's latest accomplishments, her promotion at the law firm, her engagement to David, the expensive house they bought together. Meanwhile, Melissa's own achievements went unnoticed and unmentioned. She had tried to tell them about her promotions, her deployments, the lives she had saved, but they seemed uninterested. Her father would grunt and change the subject to Ashley's wedding plans. Her mother would make comments about how it was time for Melissa to settle down and find a real job. The wedding invitation felt heavy in her hands. She knew attending would mean facing another day of being treated as the family failure. But Ashley was still her sister, and despite everything, Melissa loved her. She had already bought a plane ticket and requested leave from her current assignment. Looking at her uniform hanging in the closet, Melissa felt a mix of pride and sadness. She had worked so hard to get where she was, but her family couldn't see past their own expectations. They had no idea what she had really accomplished in her 12 years of service. She picked up her phone and dialed Ashley's number. Her sister answered on the third ring, sounding busy and stressed. "Hey Mel, what's up?" "I'm super busy with wedding stuff. I just wanted to confirm I'll be there for your big day," Melissa said, trying to keep her voice cheerful. "Oh, good. Mom was worried you might not show up. She's been telling everyone you're still in your military phase." Ashley's words stung, but Melissa wasn't surprised. "It's not a phase, Ashley. This is my career, my life." I know. Look, I have to run. The caterer is here, and we're doing a final tasting. See you at the wedding." The line went dead, and Melissa stared at her phone. Even Ashley didn't really understand what her military service meant to her. She was just another family member who saw it as something Melissa was doing until she found her real purpose. That night, Melissa lay in bed thinking about the upcoming wedding. She wondered if she should even bother going. Every family event was the same. Her parents would introduce Ashley with glowing pride while barely acknowledging Melissa's presence. They would talk about Ashley's successful career and bright future while treating Melissa like she was still trying to figure out her life. But something inside her refused to give up. She had fought too hard and come too far to let her family's opinion break her spirit. She would go to the wedding, hold her head high, and be there for her sister regardless of how her parents treated her. The next morning, Melissa started planning her trip home. She looked at her dress uniforms but decided against wearing them. Her parents had made it clear they were embarrassed by her military service, so she would dress like a civilian and keep the peace for Ashley's sake. As she packed her suitcase, Melissa couldn't shake the feeling that this wedding was going to be different somehow. She had learned to trust her instincts over the years, and something told her this trip home would change everything. The plane ticket was tucked safely in her wallet, and her leave had been approved. In 2 weeks, she would be walking into her sister's wedding, ready to face whatever criticism and disappointment her parents had in store for her. But as she folded her clothes and planned her journey home, Melissa had no idea that her family was about to learn the truth about who she really was and what she had accomplished. The wedding that was supposed to be Ashley's perfect day was about to become the day the Roberts family finally understood what they had been ignoring for 12 long years. The invitation sat on her kitchen table, a reminder of the challenge ahead. But Melissa Roberts had faced much bigger challenges than a family wedding, and she was ready for whatever came next. 2 weeks later, Melissa stood in the hotel bathroom, adjusting her simple navy blue dress. She had arrived in town the night before and had already endured an awkward dinner with her parents. They had spent the entire meal talking about Ashley's honeymoon plans and how proud they were of her daughter, the lawyer. When someone at the restaurant recognized Melissa and thanked her for her service, her father had quickly changed the subject. "We should get going," her mother called from the hotel room. "The ceremony starts in an hour, and Ashley will kill us if we're late." Melissa took a deep breath and grabbed her purse. She had decided to keep things simple today. Just attend the wedding, smile for photos, and try not to let her parents' attitude ruin Ashley's special day. She had no idea that her sister's new husband had been asking questions about her all week. The church was beautiful, decorated with white roses and gold ribbons. Melissa found a seat in the 3rd row behind her parents and close relatives. She watched as guests filled the pews, many of them family friends she hadn't seen in years. Several people waved at her, but she noticed how her parents would quickly direct their attention elsewhere whenever someone seemed interested in talking to her. "Is that little Melissa Roberts?" asked Mrs. Henderson, an old family friend who had known her since childhood. "My goodness, you look wonderful. Your parents must be so proud of everything you've accomplished." Before Melissa could respond, her father stepped between them. "She's doing fine, keeping busy with her military thing. Have you met Ashley's new in-laws? They're wonderful people." Melissa watched as her father smoothly redirected Mrs. Henderson's attention away from her and toward Ashley's future family. It was the same pattern she had experienced her entire adult life, her parents treating her career like something embarrassing that needed to be hidden or explained away. The ceremony began with traditional wedding music. Ashley looked stunning in her white dress, walking down the aisle with their father. Melissa felt genuinely happy for her sister, despite the years of being compared to her. She had always loved Ashley, even when their parents' favoritism made their relationship complicated. David, the groom, looked handsome in his black tuxedo. Melissa had only met him a few times at family gatherings, but he seemed like a good man who truly loved Ashley. He worked as a financial advisor and came from a military family, though her parents rarely mentioned that detail. As the ceremony progressed, Melissa noticed David's family in the front rows. There were several men in military dress uniforms, and she recognized the bearing and posture of active duty and retired service members. She wondered if David had served himself, but her parents had never mentioned it during their lengthy discussions about Ashley's perfect future husband. The vows were beautiful, and Melissa found herself getting emotional as she watched her sister promise to love and honor her new husband. Despite their differences, she wanted nothing but happiness for Ashley. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, The entire church erupted in applause. During the receiving line, Melissa hugged Ashley and congratulated David. He shook her hand firmly and looked directly into her eyes when he spoke to her. "Thank you for being here," he said. "It means a lot to Ashley and to me." There was something in his voice that made Melissa pause. He spoke with the same respectful tone she was used to hearing from fellow service members. But before she could think more about it, the line moved forward and her parents were already rushing her toward the reception venue. The reception was held at the fancy Grandview Country Club, the same place where Ashley had celebrated her law school graduation. The ballroom was decorated with elegant flowers and twinkling lights. Round tables were set with expensive china and crystal glasses. Melissa found her assigned seat at a table with distant cousins she barely knew. As dinner was served, she listened to her parents at the head table talking loudly about Ashley's accomplishments. They told everyone within earshot about her law degree, her promotion to partner track, and her bright future. When someone asked about Melissa, her mother would wave dismissively and say something about her, still finding herself in the military. The comment stung, but Melissa tried to focus on enjoying the meal and celebrating her sister's happiness. She had learned over the years to expect this treatment from her parents, but it never stopped hurting. During the speeches, Ashley's maid of honor talked about their college years and career success. David's best man, who was clearly a military officer in civilian clothes, spoke about loyalty, honor, and service. Melissa noticed how uncomfortable her parents looked during his speech, as if they were worried someone might connect those values to their own daughter. As the evening progressed, Melissa watched couples dancing and families taking photos. She felt increasingly out of place, like she was watching her sister's life from the outside. Her parents continued to introduce Ashley to everyone as our successful daughter, while barely acknowledging Melissa's presence. The breaking point came when her father's business partner approached their table. Mr. Wilson was a loud, boastful man who loved to show off his wealth and connections. "Robert, Patricia, congratulations on Ashley's wedding," he said, slapping her father on the back. "You must be so proud to have such a successful daughter. A lawyer marrying a financial advisor, now that's a power couple." "We certainly are," her mother beamed. "Ashley has always been our shining star." Mr. Wilson glanced over at Melissa, who was sitting quietly nearby. "And what about this one? Still playing soldier, I hear." The table went quiet. Melissa felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment as several people turned to look at her. Her father's face turned red, and she could see him struggling to find words. "Well, she's still in the military," her mother said with a forced smile. "We keep hoping she'll grow out of it and find something more suitable for a young woman." Mr. Wilson laughed loudly. "Playing dress-up in the Army, huh? When is she going to get a real job and settle down like her sister?" The humiliation was overwhelming. Melissa felt tears threatening to spill as the entire table stared at her. Her parents said nothing to defend her, just sat there looking embarrassed that the topic had come up at all. But then something unexpected happened. From across the room, she heard the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. David, the groom, was standing up from the head table. His face was serious, and he was looking directly at their table with an expression Melissa had never seen before. He began walking toward them, and the entire reception hall started to quiet down as people noticed the groom moving with purpose across the room. Ashley looked confused, following her new husband with her eyes. Melissa's parents looked nervous, unsure what was happening. David stopped directly in front of their table, his posture straight and formal. The entire room had gone silent now, everyone watching to see what the groom was going to do. Then, in one fluid motion, David came to attention and raised his right hand in a crisp military salute. "Major, General, ma'am," David said in a clear, respectful voice that carried across the silent reception hall. The words hit the room like a thunderbolt. Every single person froze, their eyes darting between David and Melissa. Mr. Wilson's mouth fell open mid-laugh. Her father's face went completely white. Her mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Melissa felt her heart stop. She had kept her recent promotion secret from her family, planning to tell them when the time was right. But David somehow knew exactly who she was and what she had accomplished. "At ease, Colonel," she replied quietly, her voice barely above a whisper, but carrying the unmistakable tone of command that made everyone in the room understand this was real. David lowered his salute, but remained at attention. "Ma'am, I want to apologize on behalf of everyone here who doesn't understand what an honor it is to have you at this wedding." The silence in the room was deafening. Ashley looked completely confused, staring back and forth between her new husband and her sister. The other guests were whispering frantically to each other, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Mr. Wilson, who had been laughing about Melissa playing soldier just moments before, looked like he wanted to disappear under the table. He stammered something unintelligible and quickly walked away, his face red with embarrassment. "David!" Ashley called from the head table, her voice shaking. "What's going on? What did you just call my sister?" David turned to face his new wife, his expression serious but gentle. "Ashley, your sister is Major General Melissa Roberts, one of the most decorated officers in the United States Army. She's a war hero who has saved countless lives and led troops in some of the most dangerous missions our country has ever undertaken." The room erupted in gasps and shocked murmurs. People were pulling out their phones, clearly wanting to look up information about Melissa. Several of the older guests, particularly the veterans in David's family, began to nod with understanding and respect. Melissa's parents sat frozen in their chairs, their faces pale with shock. Her father's mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water, unable to form words. Her mother was staring at Melissa as if seeing her for the first time. "I don't understand," Ashley said, walking over to where they were standing. "Melissa, is this true? Are you really a general?" Melissa looked at her sister, then at her parents, then at the room full of people who had just heard their entire conversation. She had spent 12 years hiding her achievements from her family, accepting their dismissive treatment because she loved them despite their inability to understand her choices. "Yes," she said simply. "I was promoted to Major General 3 months ago. I've been serving our country for 12 years, and I'm currently the youngest 2-star general in the Army." The room exploded in conversation. People were standing up, trying to get a better look at Melissa. Several veterans in the crowd were already moving toward her, wanting to shake her hand and thank her for her service. David stepped closer to Melissa and spoke in a lower voice that only she and a few nearby people could hear. "Ma'am, I served under your command during Operation Desert Shield. You saved my unit when we were pinned down by enemy fire. I've been trying to find a way to thank you for 3 years." Melissa remembered the mission. It had been one of the most dangerous operations of her career, and she had made a split-second decision that saved 17 soldiers from certain death. She had never expected to meet any of those men again, especially not at her sister's wedding. "You don't need to thank me, Colonel. You and your men did the hard work. I just did my job. With respect, ma'am, what you did was far beyond the call of duty. You risked your own life to save ours, and then you stayed with us through the entire evacuation. My men, and I will never forget that." Ashley was staring at both of them, tears streaming down her face. "Melissa, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell me you were a general?" Melissa looked at her sister, then at her parents, who were still sitting in stunned silence. "Because every time I tried to talk about my military service, you all made it clear you weren't interested. You treated it like a phase I was going through, something embarrassing that you hoped I would outgrow." "But a general," Ashley whispered. "You're a general, and we never knew." The weight of years of dismissive treatment was finally hitting the family. Melissa could see the realization dawning on their faces as they began to understand what they had been ignoring and belittling for over a decade. More people were approaching now, including several high-ranking military officers who had been guests at the wedding. Word was spreading quickly through the room about who Melissa really was, and people were beginning to show her the respect she had earned but never received from her own family. "Ma'am," said a retired Army colonel who was a friend of David's family, "I've heard about your work in Afghanistan and Iraq. The men and women who served under your command speak of you with nothing but respect and admiration." Melissa nodded politely, still overwhelmed by the sudden attention. She had attended the wedding expecting to be ignored and dismissed, not celebrated and honored by a room full of strangers, while her own family sat in shocked silence. Her father finally found his voice. "Melissa," he said shakily, standing up from his chair. "I had no idea. We had no idea." "I tried to tell you," Melissa replied, her voice steady but filled with years of hurt. "Every time I came home, every phone call, every letter, I tried to share my accomplishments with you. But you always changed the subject or made it clear you didn't want to hear about my military career." Her mother was crying now, her makeup running down her cheeks. "We thought it was just a job. We didn't know you were saving lives, leading troops, making such a difference." "It was never just a job, Mom. It was my calling, my purpose, my life's work. And you spent 12 years treating it like a hobby that embarrassed you." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of more military personnel who had been at the wedding. They formed a respectful circle around Melissa, each wanting to introduce themselves and pay their respects. The contrast between their treatment of her and her family's years of dismissal was stark and impossible to ignore. Ashley watched as distinguished military officers lined up to shake her sister's hand and thank her for her service. She saw the way they looked at Melissa with genuine respect and admiration, the way they spoke to her with the deference due to someone who had earned their position through courage and sacrifice. "Melissa," Ashley said, her voice breaking, "I'm so sorry. We're all so sorry." But before Melissa could respond, another commotion started at the entrance to the reception hall. A group of men and women in military dress uniforms were entering, led by a man with more ribbons and medals than anyone else in the room. David's eyes widened as he recognized the newcomer. "Oh my God," he whispered. "That's General Morrison, the Joint Chiefs of Staff." The room went completely silent again as General Morrison walked directly toward Melissa, his expression serious and formal. Everyone stepped back to make room as he approached, and Melissa felt her heart racing as she realized what was happening. This was about to get much more complicated than a simple family wedding. General Morrison stopped directly in front of Melissa and came to attention. The entire reception hall held its breath as he raised his hand in a sharp salute. "Major General Roberts," he said in a commanding voice that filled the room. "I apologize for interrupting your family celebration, but I have urgent news that couldn't wait." Melissa returned the salute, her mind racing. General Morrison was one of the most powerful military leaders in the country, and his presence at Ashley's wedding meant something significant was happening. "What can I do for you, General?" she asked, maintaining her composure despite the hundreds of eyes watching their every move. "Ma'am, I'm here to inform you that the President of the United States has approved your promotion to Lieutenant General, effective immediately. You are now the youngest three-star general in Army history." The room erupted in gasps and applause. People were standing up, trying to get a better view of the historic moment unfolding before them. Melissa felt her knees go weak as the magnitude of the announcement hit her. "Furthermore," General Morrison continued, "you are being awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for your actions during Operation Desert Shield, where you saved 17 American lives at great personal risk. The ceremony will be held at the Pentagon next month, and the President himself will present the medal." David stepped forward, his face beaming with pride and emotion. "Ma'am, those 17 lives included mine. Every man in that unit owes you everything." Ashley was crying openly now, staring at her sister with a mixture of awe and shame. "Melissa, you're going to meet the President. You're receiving one of the highest military honors in the country." "Yes," General Morrison answered for her. Major General Roberts is being recognized not just for her heroism in combat, but for her exceptional leadership and dedication to our country's defense. She is considered one of the finest military minds of her generation. Melissa's father stood up slowly, his face still pale with shock. He walked over to where she was standing, his steps uncertain. When he reached her, he stopped and looked directly into her eyes. "Melissa," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "I don't know what to say. I'm so ashamed of how we've treated you all these years." "Dad," Melissa replied gently, "you didn't know." "But we should have known," her mother said, joining them with tears streaming down her face. "We should have listened. We should have been proud instead of embarrassed. We should have supported you instead of dismissing everything you accomplished." The conversation was interrupted by more applause as other military officers in the room began to surround Melissa, each wanting to congratulate her on her promotion and upcoming medal ceremony. The reception had completely transformed from a wedding celebration into an impromptu military honor ceremony. Mr. Wilson, who had been hiding near the bar since his earlier humiliation, slowly approached the group. His face was red with embarrassment and shame. "Major General Roberts," he said, his voice shaking, "I owe you a sincere apology. My comments earlier were completely inappropriate and disrespectful. I had no idea who you were or what you had accomplished for our country." Melissa looked at the man who had mocked her military service just an hour earlier. She could see the genuine remorse in his eyes, and despite her hurt feelings, she chose to respond with grace. "Apology accepted, Mr. Wilson. We all make mistakes when we don't have complete information." Her response only made him look more ashamed. He nodded gratefully and backed away, clearly understanding that he had been shown more kindness than he deserved. Ashley approached her sister, still in her wedding dress, but no longer caring about the reception or the celebration. "Melissa, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "What is it?" "All these years, when Mom and Dad were bragging about my law career and my achievements, how did it feel to know that you were out there saving lives and serving our country at the highest levels?" Melissa was quiet for a moment, considering her answer. "It hurt," she admitted. "It hurt every time you called my military service a phase. It hurt when you changed the subject whenever I tried to share my accomplishments. It hurt to be treated like the family disappointment when I was actually serving my country with honor. But you never said anything. You never told us we were wrong. I tried to, Ashley. For 12 years, I tried to tell you about my promotions, my missions, the difference I was making. But every time I brought it up, you and Mom and Dad would make it clear that you weren't interested in hearing about my military career." Ashley looked around the room at all the military officers who were treating her sister with obvious respect and admiration. "We were so wrong. We were so completely, terribly wrong." General Morrison approached them again, holding an official-looking document. "Major General Roberts, I have your new promotion orders here. Would you like me to administer the oath now, or would you prefer to wait for a more formal ceremony?" Melissa looked around the room at her family, at David and his military friends, at all the wedding guests who were now witnessing this incredible moment. "I think now would be perfect, General." "Very well. Ladies and gentlemen," General Morrison called out to the room, "we are about to witness the promotion of Major General Melissa Roberts to Lieutenant General. This is a historic moment, as she will be the youngest 3-star general in Army history." The entire reception hall fell silent as General Morrison began the oath. Melissa raised her right hand and repeated the words that bound her to serve and protect the United States of America. Her voice was strong and clear, carrying the weight of 12 years of dedicated service. As she finished the oath, the room erupted in applause and cheers. Military officers were saluting, civilians were clapping, and her family was crying with a mixture of pride and regret. David stepped forward and saluted his former commander one more time. "Congratulations, Lieutenant General Roberts. It has been the honor of my life to serve under your command and to call you family. The word family hit everyone like a physical blow. David, who had known Melissa for less than a year through his relationship with Ashley, had shown her more respect and recognition than her own parents had in 12 years of military service. Her father approached her again, this time with tears in his eyes. "Melissa, can you ever forgive us? Can you forgive me for being so blind, so stubborn, so completely wrong about everything?" Melissa looked at her father, then at her mother and sister, then at the room full of people who were now seeing her for who she truly was. She had spent years hoping for this moment, dreaming of the day when her family would finally understand and appreciate her service to their country. "Dad," she said softly, "I forgive you. I forgive all of you. But I need you to understand that this isn't just about the rank or the medals or the recognition. This is about 12 years of feeling like you were ashamed of me, like you wished I had made different choices." "We were never ashamed of you," her mother said through her tears. "We were just scared. We didn't understand the military world, and we were afraid of losing you to something we couldn't comprehend. But instead of trying to understand, you chose to dismiss it. You chose to treat my calling like a rebellious phase instead of the purpose that drives my entire life." The weight of their years of dismissive treatment was finally hitting the family with full force. They were beginning to understand not just what Melissa had accomplished, but how deeply they had hurt her with their lack of support and recognition. Ashley walked over to her sister and took her hands. "Melissa, I know we can't undo 12 years of being wrong, but I want you to know that from this day forward, I will never stop being proud of you. I will never stop telling people about my sister, the war hero, the lieutenant general, the woman who has dedicated her life to protecting our country." As the evening continued, more and more people approached Melissa to congratulate her and thank her for her service. The wedding reception had become a celebration of her military achievements, and for the first time in 12 years, she felt truly appreciated by the people who mattered most to her. But as the night wound down and the guests began to leave, Melissa knew that the real work was just beginning. Her family had finally learned who she really was, but rebuilding their relationship after 12 years of misunderstanding would take time, patience, and a lot of honest conversations. The little girl who had dreamed of serving her country had become one of the most decorated and respected military leaders in America. And finally, her family was beginning to understand what that really meant. 3 months later, Melissa stood in the Oval Office of the White House, wearing her dress uniform with 3 stars gleaming on her shoulders. The President of the United States was pinning the Distinguished Service Cross to her chest while cameras flashed and her family watched with tears of pride in their eyes. "Lieutenant General Roberts," the President said as he stepped back to admire the medal, "your courage and leadership have made our nation safer and stronger. The 17 soldiers you saved that day in Afghanistan are here today, along with their families, because of your heroic actions." Melissa looked out at the crowd gathered in the Oval Office. David was there in his dress uniform, standing next to Ashley, who was beaming with pride. Her parents were in the front row, her father wearing a small American flag pin on his lapel and her mother holding a tissue to wipe away her tears. But the most meaningful sight was the group of soldiers she had saved during Operation Desert Shield. They were all there with their wives and children, some of whom had been born after that dangerous mission. These families existed because of a split-second decision she had made in the desert 3 years ago. "Ma'am," said Sergeant Rodriguez, one of the soldiers from her unit, "my daughter was born 6 months after you saved our lives. She's here today because of you." A little girl, about 4 years old, stepped forward and handed Melissa a drawing she had made. It showed stick figures in military uniforms with the words, "Thank you, General Melissa," written in crayon. "This is for you," the little girl said shyly. "Daddy says you're a hero." Melissa knelt down to the child's level, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is the most beautiful medal I've ever received." As the ceremony continued, Melissa thought about the long journey that had brought her to this moment. From the day she had enlisted against her parents' wishes to standing in the most powerful office in the world, she had never wavered in her commitment to serving her country. After the ceremony, the family gathered for a private dinner at a restaurant near the White House. The conversation was different now than it had been at Ashley's wedding 3 months earlier. Her parents asked detailed questions about her work, her responsibilities, and her plans for the future. They listened carefully to every word, making up for 12 years of not paying attention. "Melissa," her father said as they waited for dessert, "I've been thinking about what you said at the wedding, about us being embarrassed by your military service." "Dad, we don't have to keep talking about this." "Yes, we do. Because I realize now that we weren't embarrassed by your service. We were intimidated by it. We were scared that we weren't good enough, weren't important enough to be the parents of someone who was doing such important work." Her mother nodded in agreement. "We thought our insurance business and Ashley's law career were impressive, but compared to what you were doing, saving lives and protecting our country, we felt small and insignificant. So, instead of being proud of you," her father continued, "we tried to diminish your accomplishments to make ourselves feel better. We treated your calling like a phase because we couldn't handle the fact that our daughter was braver and more important than we could ever be." Melissa reached across the table and took her father's hand. "Dad, what you and Mom built with your business is important too. You provided for our family, you gave Ashley and me opportunities, you contributed to your community. There's honor in that. But we should have seen the honor in what you were doing too. We should have been bragging about our daughter, the war hero, instead of trying to change the subject every time someone asked about you." Ashley, who had been quiet during most of the conversation, finally spoke up. "Melissa, I have a confession to make. After the wedding, I started researching everything you've done in the military. I read about your missions, your awards, the soldiers you've led. I had no idea how incredible your career has been." "You didn't have to do that, Ashley." "Yes, I did. Because I realized that for 12 years, I've been bragging about my law degree and my job at the firm, while my sister was out there literally saving lives and making history. I was so focused on my own success that I never bothered to learn about yours." The conversation was interrupted by a young man in military uniform who approached their table. "Excuse me, are you Lieutenant General Roberts?" "Yes, I am." "Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Johnson. I just graduated from West Point, and I wanted to thank you. Your story has been an inspiration to so many young officers. Knowing that someone can rise from enlisted ranks to 3-star general gives hope to everyone who wants to serve their country." Melissa's parents watched as she spoke with the young officer, giving him encouragement and advice about his military career. They saw the respect in his eyes, the way he hung on her every word, the genuine admiration he had for their daughter. After he left, her mother spoke quietly. "That young man looks at you the way we should have been looking at you all these years." "Mom, you're looking at me that way now. That's what matters. I just keep thinking about all the times we had a chance to be proud of you and we missed it. All the promotions we didn't celebrate, all the achievements we didn't acknowledge, all the times we made you feel like you weren't good enough. But that's over now," Melissa said firmly. "We can't change the past, but we can move forward together." As they finished dinner, Ashley pulled out her phone. "Melissa, I want to show you something. This is my new business card." She handed the card to her sister. Under Ashley's name and law firm information, there was a new line that read, "Proud sister of Lieutenant General Melissa Roberts, U.S. Army." "Ashley, you don't have to do that." "Yes, I do. For 12 years, I've been the successful daughter while you were treated like the family disappointment. Now everyone who meets me is going to know that my sister is a war hero and one of the most important military leaders in America." Her father pulled out his wallet and showed her a new photo he was carrying. It was a picture of Melissa in her dress uniform, standing next to the American flag. "I've been showing this to everyone at the office. I tell them about my daughter, the Lieutenant General, about the medal she received from the President, about the lives she saved." "And I've been calling all my friends," her mother added, "telling them about the ceremony today, about how proud we are of you, about how wrong we were to not support you all these years." As they left the restaurant, Melissa felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. Her family finally understood who she was and what she had accomplished. The years of feeling like the family disappointment were over, replaced by the love and pride she had always hoped to receive. But more importantly, she had learned that her worth wasn't determined by her family's recognition or approval. She had served her country with honor, saved lives, and risen to the highest levels of military leadership because it was her calling, not because she was seeking validation from others. The little girl who had walked into that recruitment office at 18 years old had become exactly who she was meant to be. And now, finally, her family was proud to call her their daughter and sister. 6 months later, Melissa received a letter from David and Ashley. They were expecting their first child, and they wanted to ask her to be the godmother. The letter ended with a simple line that brought tears to her eyes. "We want our child to grow up knowing that their Aunt Melissa is a hero, and we want them to learn from your example of courage, dedication, and service to others." As Melissa folded the letter and placed it in her desk drawer, she smiled. The revenge she had unknowingly gotten at Ashley's wedding wasn't about humiliating her family or making them feel bad. It was about finally being seen for who she truly was and helping her family understand the importance of supporting and celebrating the people you love, no matter what path they choose in life. The greatest victory wasn't the promotion or the medal or the recognition from strangers. It was the moment her family finally said the words she had been waiting 12 years to hear. "We are proud of you, and we're sorry it took us so long to say it." And in the end, that was worth more than any military honor she could ever receive.